I was telling Mr. Ben, I was telling Senator Fisher how nice your testimony was at the end where you talked about your ballot is ready. Could you talk about how you build trust? This idea of bringing in younger poll workers is something I'm sure all of our Secretary of States are doing. And beyond that, talked about how you build trust, to use your position to build trust in our elections with voters.
Two things that I'll point out. Secretary Evnen and myself accept many invitations all over our state to people that want to talk about our election process, whether it be the testing we do before the elections or the manual audit we conduct after our elections and everything that's done in between. So communicating on a local level, on a personal level, one-to-one, helps in that effort. But to those that still want to question the integrity of our election process, we recommend to them, become a poll worker. Immerse yourself into the process and see just how dedicated our election officials are to the integrity and safety of our elections.
Thank you. Mr. Farley, Ms. Howard, both of you in your testimony mentioned the importance of federal funding and how it is important to election administration security. I really appreciated your words, Mr. Farley. Way back, Senator Langford and I did a lot of work on this with the paper ballot and also with the cyber protection and the like. Could you both talk about the importance of federal funding for elections?
Mike, in Tennessee, we just used HAVA funds to replace DREs with the verified voter paper audit trail. So it was a great resource for HAVA funds that we just had. So I think anytime you can fund needs, whether it be through state funding or federal funding, is a good thing, because a lot of times, up until recently, a lot of times elections was not really a priority to be funded on the local state level. So I think anytime that we have funds, we have to make sure that we have to be good stewards of those funds and put them to good use where it benefits all the voters in our jurisdiction.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Howard?
The
two Tennessee people at the end.
Thank you for the question, Senator. I think federal funding is absolutely critical. We have seen the huge transition across the country from paperless voting machines to now, such as in Mr. Farley's county, to paper-based voting systems, which is a critical election security component. And in many states, for instance, Pennsylvania, that would not have happened but for the additional federal funding that has been provided. And there are new additional expenses that election officials are now facing. So some of the physical security enhancements that Senator Welch talked about earlier, the bulletproof glass, the structural changes to include or add on additional doors of entry or exit as a physical security improvement, we estimated that Brennan Center will cost about $300 million across the country. We estimate that election officials will need another $300 million to protect against insider threats that are, again, somewhat new for election officials who need to deal with them. So we can have key card access to critical systems such as voting equipment, and a log of everyone that has access to them. So there are these new expenses, and we still have the ongoing expenses associated with maintaining the voting equipment, which we estimate will cost about $600 million over 10 years.
Okay, thank you. I would note for the committee that Secretary Fontes made the biggest sacrifice. He could have been at the Diamondbacks game tonight. Is that correct, Secretary Fontes?
Regretfully, but honorably, yes. I'm happy to be here with you, Matt.
Okay, very good. And I think, who did you give your ticket to?
I gave it to my partner, Nicole. She and my mom. I hope we'll enjoy a Diamondbacks victory.
Okay, well, we'll all be watching. So, as you approach this next year's elections, how do you anticipate addressing the ongoing challenges with the safety of election workers and officials? What do you think we should be doing to help? How are you preparing them?
Well, we're really engaging in a kitchen sink approach in all areas. We're coordinating a lot more closely with state, local, and federal officials. One of the things that I mentioned was a tabletop exercise that we're going to have in the middle of next month, where CISA is going to be helping us. A tabletop, if you don't know, is where we get a whole bunch of folks together, run through a scenario, and then we throw sort of problems at the team. And that includes not just local, state, and federal law enforcement folks as part of the exercise who don't know what the exercise is going to be, but also our communication staff, our logistics and transportation people, our own IT folks from across the state, county level and state level as well. So those trainings are critically important. Some of the other things that we're hoping we can do is engage more closely with the physical security agents and the cybersecurity agents that CISA provides. This is a service that CISA has that I think is essential, critical, and should not be subject to any sorts of maybe potential federal issues when it comes to your next phase of negotiations and budgets. Those folks need to be online all the time. And so we're hoping to be able to talk with folks at these federal agencies to maintain open these lines of communication on those folks who are continuing to help us prepare. We're communicating a lot more clearly now with the Arizona Counterterrorism Information Center and many of our other partners, but more particularly to our folks who are out there in the field, who are enhancing and diversifying the kinds of training that we're allowing and giving to our elections officials, because it is that training for those people who are on the front lines, at the polling places, at our warehouses, at our vote centers. That's what really matters, because they're the ones that are facing it full front.
Okay, last, Secretary Schmidt, this issue of turnover and people leaving in every state in the country. Mr. Bennett talked about what he has done in Nebraska. You want to talk a little bit how you're going to handle that going forward in Pennsylvania?
Yes, with the turnover, we found it necessary, and the Shapiro administration has put resources behind it to build a team of trainers so we can help train new election administrators in different counties in Pennsylvania to produce training materials for them to rely on. I know when I became an election commissioner in Philadelphia, I was elected in 2011, 2012. The presidential was my first election. It is a very difficult lift, any election, let alone being brand new and facing a presidential election, and in our case, one of the biggest cities and one of the biggest swing states in America. So having those materials, Pennsylvania has one uniform election code, but counties have flexibility at the county level to administer elections, so we have to make sure that there is sort of county flexibility built into it, but to provide them with all the resources they need, and also to facilitate communication between election administrators. Some of them in some counties have been around for a long time, and they are more than eager to share their experience to help other election administrators in other counties. Pennsylvania, or any state, is either going to be successful or not based on one county or another. It takes all of us.
Okay, thank you.